Welcome back, venturers. It's time for another discussion about VNs. I am MR, and together with Tauros, we have concocted a dastardly plan today. The society must suffer, the people must tremble, but it's all justified. Or, we've stepped on a Lego in the past. Dr. Evil Tauros, what is your first command to our minions?
Our first command is that we shall spread the majesty of VNture podcast to every corner of the world. Our words of truth shall pierce everyone's ears. That is an order. No. Yes, we are revisiting the topic of evil main characters. We talked about this in a previous video over a year ago, as of the time of this recording now. But there's still so much to discuss about a topic that visual novels can provide a pretty unique look into. So, MR, to recap about our old one, let's just go over the basics. Visual novels frequently have a main character. Sometimes they shift the perspective around, but usually there's one person who's piloting the story. And just like with many stories, our hero is usually someone we can admire, we can look up to, we can sympathize with, maybe we can live through his shoes. To a certain degree, some people would tell you that a main character needs to be likable, and to be honest, in many stories you have a likable main character. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that our protagonist needs to always be good. There are plenty of stories where our main character has a bit of a mean streak, or maybe they have some questionable morals. But we dove into that topic a bit. In our last video, it seemed to mostly focus about shades of gray. But I also want to address some of the main characters that are repugnantly evil. Some characters who are unquestionably holding some unsympathetic sides to themselves front and center. So MR, on that note, what are some ideas that you're bringing to the table here?
Well, as you correctly pointed out, protagonists are usually something you root for. And honestly, you don't need to root for morally goody two-shoes characters all the time. Case in point, probably the biggest one has to be Rance. His moral compass is questionable at best, yet he has enough charisma for you, the reader, often, but not always, root for him to succeed, right? But today we want to focus, but how about the protagonists in VNs that maybe they are so morally questionable and do something bad enough that you start rooting for them to fail? And I have brought 3 different ways in which that can manifest, okay? First one is when character, the main protagonist, isn't evil but can become due to story progression and or choices. So an example of that, I have brought Baldur's Sky. So Baldur's Sky is a story of amnesia. You start as a protagonist who has no memories, and you slowly piece together what has happened, who you are. Most notably on the forefront of how you assimilate information is your relationship with your father. Over the course of the story, your memory starts flooding back faster and slower, and the protagonist has an opportunity to switch allegiances from the merry group of mercenaries to maybe more serious factions, etc. And in such one of the roads, you can allege yourself in a very, cruel and amoral action of old military personnel, so to speak. I don't want to give too much spoilers, okay?
You're getting too far into avoiding spoilers.
Yeah.
You're being so considerate.
Yeah. Exactly. But you do so in such a way that breaks the ties of all the relationships with all your merry band of misfits along the way. So basically, you are betraying more and more characters. And hilarious into that fact is, in previous episode, we talked about how some protagonists can stray away from their path due to the influence of some heroine, so they simp real hard for them. This is similar the case. You went so bad, you were simping so bad, you definitely went with the wrong crowd. So much so that the conclusion of what is called Route 3 gives you the ultimate split. You can start questioning finally at the apex of the entire story, or maybe you said, no, this is the way. And this one, this in particular, this is the way, is the route in which you have betrayed everything that you stood for, both in the past of what you don't remember, and as well as all the supporting cast that tried to help you remember, all in front of some vague idea instilled to you via military means. I mean, more of a doctrine or something. And it's such a great bad end in which you, the reader, slowly just start to detest the main protagonist. So much so, one of the final lines of that route, and I think it's just amazing, is protagonist thinking the only way forward for him is he has to be right. Because if anything in his reasoning and his motivation is wrong, he is the biggest shithead ever. Man, that route had an amazing bad end with a story I rarely see explored to this extent. I believe I first brought this whole interaction in our episode about parents, because it was a very interesting clash in which your parent becomes the heroic antagonist and me, the reader, I was rooting, you know what, protagonist, I know I control you. I know I made those choices. Heck, I even control in the gameplay, but you have to fucking die in this one. You are so wrong for so many different reasons.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about it at length in the previous episode, how visual novels can give you monologues from these characters. We can see their inner thoughts, in the narrative text through the screen. And so we can really see into the mind of someone who is evil for various reasons, shades of gray, or delusional about himself, or, as you mentioned just now, someone who's holding so fast onto beliefs because if he questioned them, he'd fall to pieces at what he's doing.
Yep.
And so the whole aspect of, corruption as a choice, it's very interesting. Yeah, do you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that you got plenty of opportunity in the same route to start questioning earlier, but the specific screenshot I provided is you are so far gone. If you start questioning now, you're the worst kind of person ever. So you better be right about everything else.
Now, in other VNs, we can kind of get that through bad endings. I think one of the most famous ones has got to be Fate's Day Night, where you've got that whole Mind of Steel ending where Shiro reaches a different answer to his ideals than he's been holding on to for the whole rest of the visual novel. And we don't see too much into that future, but we get a glimpse into what would happen if he embraced some sort of different ideals, some borderline villainous ideals. But again, that kind of just gets into the territory of just a funny what if, just a neat little premise hidden away in a bad ending. But that's not what this is about. We want to see some evil main characters, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I specifically wanted to start with that, because Baldur's Gate had a very extensive approach to that and had a very lengthy bad end with the story. Your example with Fate is hilarious in such a way that it's super fast, one, and you get immediate Taiga dodge in which the character says just to you, just go back and change the chat. What the fuck are you doing? Even the characters in the Taiga dodge are repulsed by that choice, okay?
How could you? Because yes, that is an aspect of gameplay, of making choices. And some video games, some visual novels with gameplay aspects can take it further. Like there's Undertale with the whole genocide route, where you have to go and specifically fight and kill a whole bunch of monsters to wipe out all the trash mobs in areas. And this wildly changes the story and who your main character, what kind of character they are. It's one of those things where we can actually, incorporate some player input. There's Gnasia, where depending on how, the round starts, you may be automatically assigned an evil route. So now you have to go through lying to your crewmates, picking off your former friends one by one until you can win and take over the ship as the evil Gnasia. So I think there's a rich aspect for visual novels and for gameplay. It's one of those things where the whole reader involvement really gets to shine. Because as much as visual novels allow for some input, most commonly through choices, we don't always get, the most narrative impact. It's just a matter of you trying to click the right buttons so that you can get on the right heroine's route, or you can just avoid some bad ends where a tree branch falls on your head and you die and you got to go back to the right answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are absolutely correct. But as you also pointed out, the more interesting examples of today's topic would be the titles in which you start evil, and then maybe even have a compelling reason as why you are that way. But over the course of the story, the justification just doesn't hold the test of time, let's be honest. And the one title I brought as an example for that, I mean, two titles, honestly, is from SQD. And it was the Yamizome Liberator and Yamizome Revenge. Both of them are stories about protagonist that was, how can I say it? He was wronged by his environment, but gets the chance to enact revenge because he makes a pact with a demon lord.
He makes a pact with the demon?
Yes, a demon lord appears behind him and offers him a pact. In case of, for example, Yamizome Revenger, the main protagonist, hilariously enough, returns back from the isekai after grueling lengths of time that he spent there. The goddess that he helped with said to him, "Tough luck, you don't get a reward, bye." And he's so angry about that, the demon lord descends and said to him, "Listen, I know what you're angry, let's make a pact." And now you act upon your anger, okay? But the cruel acts and how he goes around hunting the heroines, it's just, at some point, it's just not justifiable, in my opinion. It starts interestingly enough. This is a title in which you kind of act like a detective in a day-night cycle. During the day, you attend the high school life like a normal high school boy and try to poke around, be very nosy with your chosen heroine/targets, trying to find their weaknesses. So, for example, she hates loud noises, and then during the night, you bring a megaphone to the fight, something silly like that. And this progressively goes even harsher and harsher when you exploit their traumas and fears. And I'm like, really? And so one justification is like, you got shafted because the goddess that should give you some prize for isekai didn't, because you were too greedy, by the way, with what you wanted. Like, no. You're an asshat at that point. Especially the ones you exploit are all someone who trusts you. You gain their trust. They like the protagonist well enough to share with the secrets, and you immediately go to the night and it's like, ha ha, you fear mice, you say? So this is my mice from the computer. Something silly like that.
Usually you hear about stories of revenge, and it's some terrible fate that befell the main character, and they go through their whole sadness arc, and then they come out on the other side wishing to bring pain on the ones who inflicted this on them. But now you're telling me about this title with Yamizome Revenger or whatever, where some guy just takes a little slight way too personally and just gets way lost in his own head about bringing righteous justice on these innocent people.
And it's a revenge mistargeted, because instead of the target of revenge being the goddess herself, no, it's like his random classmates. I'm like, why?
They're not even related. He's just looking for an excuse. Like, yeah, here we go. Here's an evil main character. Now, as we mentioned before, part of the appeal of an evil main character is that the reader can have fun experiencing this sort of thing without actually doing it in real life.
Yes.
There's all sorts of stuff that happens in visual novels that are big no-nos in reality. So that is part of the appeal.
Yeah, sure. Those are big no-nos, but still, at the very least, I feel like the ones that do it very well have either some sort of even more evil person, regardless of whether or not it's painted as angelic or something, but for whatever reason, it wronged the protagonist. So his claim of revenge is somewhat justified. In this way, he just uses that as an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, ugh.
I mentioned at the beginning here that usually main characters are some sort of likable. And in this case, you're talking about the guy and you seem kind of exasperated from the tone of your voice.
Exactly.
And so, does this harm your enjoyment of reading a VN when you have a main character who's this evil, like you said?
Honestly, by around middle point, I just didn't like this title.
Ooh,
because
that hurts.
The only saving grace were the heroines themselves, because it was actually interesting how to find their weak points and exploit it. I actually felt like that's an interesting concept, but definitely the way the protagonist came about it is just like, I guess it's interesting plot point of finding why you hate this and that, and then you bring us and exploit that during the fight. But still, why do you do that exactly? Okay, and it's falls apart real fast.
Ooh, not ideal.
Especially since there are some weird points during the Yamizome Revenger in which if you finally break the heroine and she joins your evil group, then she says, "Oh, thank you for helping me overcome my traumas." I'm like, dude, no. He was not doing that out of kindness of his heart.
Oh dear, oh dear. So this is one case where it seems like there was the bones of a interesting story, but then the whole aspect of an evil main character threw a lot of this stuff out of whack and got It's the benefits, the cool stuff of the story is fighting against this whole evil side of things instead of working with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It has a very nice template of finding clues and using them in combat and exploiting them. That's fine, but the justification of all of that was just no bueno.
Darn, brutal. So then
I have
go for it.
Another interesting example, because what I just brought to you is more or less a linear story in which you don't really have much choice than to progress it, honestly. And you start being evil. But what about starting being evil but having a choice, right? So I brought the last criteria is VN in which you have an evil protagonist, but you have the choices of how much evil do you want to be, okay? In case, let's start with Beat Blades Haruka, because this is a title in which you don't necessarily need to be evil, but one of the ways you can be. So basically, this is a story in which you are conveniently the protagonist that has been blessed with the powers of training ninjas, with some, let's say, arrogant excuse to make them more powerful by being excited, let's say it like that. And the way you go about those training can be more or less severe, okay? This is all because of the invasion of an evil organization, the Crescent Moon, and they are doing some evil deeds. And let me be frank, the antagonists in that title were so freaking hilarious. The main bad guys were super serious with a very interesting backstories, and the smaller villain of the week were super hilarious comedics straight out from the episode of Power Rangers, basically. Kind of over-exaggerated trope, like a mushroom man that forces people to eat mushrooms, right? For example, something super silly. So the antagonists were super cool. And over the course of the story, you obviously get to know motivation of the evil organization, especially the main trio. And you start to wonder, wait a moment, they suffered a ton of injustice. Maybe we should join hands. So you get a choice to join the ranks. And hilariously enough, if you make that choice, depending of how evil you have, how brutal you were in training your ninjas, you split into two different endings for the story. You either run more or less a kind or well-mannered Yakuza that using vigilante tactics tries to rein in all the bad stuff that is happening, which is super interesting. Or you were so evil you turn completely blue and you want to destroy the world. What the fuck?
He
blue
turned himself
is,
blue?
Yes, and I believe me, I tried to find a screenshot that encapsulated the silliness of that, but it was all spoilers, sadly, so I don't have it. That was the most
opposed
idiotic...
to telling us that the main character blew himself trying to take
yes,
over the world.
You went so stupid you became blue.
Thanks for the spoiler warning, Amar.
Yeah, just don't go full blue. And this is so stupid because suddenly, instead of transforming into somewhat evil mafia that kinda does the gray area, in a gray area vigilante work, kind of like Batman. Now you are super ultra evil that burn villages and destroy cities. Like, the fuck kind of ending is this? Up until that point, even the most severe training you did to your own people has been justified, given the fact you had to fight for the greater good. Fine. Even joining hands with them and creating Yakuza was actually very interesting, the way you then managed it. And turning blue like an evil smurf just to burn Tokyo, it's just like, what? Why? How? Out of nowhere.
It's not out of nowhere. It's been your gameplay decisions of how you've been molding this character into his personality.
It's just such a huge 180 when it comes to story, with protagonists being, at the very least, meaning well for the city, to now suddenly saying, you know what, the prices are too high. Let's burn the store. Like, what the fuck happened with you, protagonist?
It's like in Mass Effect.
Why are you so blue?
Mass Effect, when you're trying to be like a good person, but then you accidentally hit the evil dialogue response, and out of nowhere you're like, shut the fuck up. It's like, no, go back.
But probably the more closer to my heart example of evil becoming too evil has to stem from Venus Blood series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's first talk about Venus Blood as a series. This is a series of games that tend to split the story and character relations. What I mean by that, over the course of the story, there will be a split, whether or not you follow more lawful ending to whatever crisis you're facing, or a more chaotic one. This is in stark contrast to whether or not you want a good or evil relation with your crew. Think about that. You have good and evil for markers of your crew, and chaos or lawful for the overall plot progression. And interestingly enough, you start as an evil demon in every single iteration of this title, and you have an opportunity to try to persuade, using different means, of your companions, your heroines, to your side, and have that relation be either good or evil, regardless of which ending you chose. So you can end up having a lawful resolution despite your entire team being evil. So you turned your harem into evil harem, which is hilarious, so to say. But I have issue with almost all chaotic, or rather true chaos endings, which go way beyond everything. So over the course of the
chaotic
story,
endings?
yes, Yes. Well, I don't want to go into too much details. I want to give you some pointers. So over the course of the story, for example, in the newest release, Internationally Ragnarok, you slowly conquer other lands that for whatever reason they are at war. I don't want to get into that. And to resolve conflict, you often are presented with three choices at the end. You can pacify by, for example, diplomatic means, so humane aid, oftentimes. The second is more devious, some sort of a weird plan. So, for example, let's sneak at night and take out their commanders. Okay. And the third, let's poison their farmlands so they will starve. Like, the third is so destructive for any future prospects. You burn bridges so hard, ultimately ending on a route that is self-destructive. And what happens in those stories, you transform from, that's an evil product, I kind of see where he's coming from because he's a demon, into, why the fuck are you keep destroying everything? You will end up with no one. And that often what happens in Venus Blood, the most chaotic of routes, is instead of, I have managed for 5 goddesses and corrupted them into evil deities, instead of that, you burn your evil harem on pyre and now you have nobody. Like, those stories are so stupid. Why?
Well, to a certain degree, it tracks that if you get that evil in your head, you get too delusional and you do something stupid. That follows, I'd like to think. True now that follows. And more specifically why I focus on Ragnarok, why it did it so interestingly, because the story was still captivating enough that kept me wanting more and see what happens, especially since as your main antagonist, the old protagonist of the previous entry stands up as a heroic protagonist, Loki, and he says, no, never again. And I'm like, I want my protagonist to lose. He fucked up so hard. I'm not going to. No, he's so wrong. Loki, please save me from this ending. And by the way, the previous protagonist of Venus Blood is no saint himself. He's no goody two-shoes. He's definitely evil in many aspects, but he recognizes the current protagonist as complete batshit insane, and he wants to end him. Like, hell yeah. Because the protagonist went so far beyond sacrificing even the most trusty and most loyal people on his chaotic route. I'm like, why? That's so stupid. You had so many great characters that you convinced to join your evil harem. And then you said, you know what? How about sacrificing them to the evil deity? I'm like, why? I have no words. I was so angry at the protagonist. Are temporary, but evil Master God is forever.
Yes, that's exactly what I want. I want nothing. I want the conclusion of my story not being Saved Kingdom, not ruling evil empire. I want void. Yes, that's exactly what I want from my story. I don't know why, despite me overall liking evil protagonists, and I like Venus Blood as a series, I often end up being severely disappointed in the true maximum chaotic routes, because I feel like they go super evil. It's way beyond mustache twirling. You basically destroy everything and everyone, and you rule over nothing. Why? You had an opportunity to create your evil harem empire, but no.
Nope.
I like floating ghosts and more power. Power.
Well,
give me more power.
That's why it's an ending. The writers don't have to think of anything beyond that point.
That's true, but doesn't make it any less annoying for me, and I start rooting for the opposition.
Oh dear. I feel like that's a death sentence no matter what kind of hero you have, is when if your reader is ever rooting for the other side to win against you, that can't be a good sign. I get that sometimes villains are a lot more charismatic, Or maybe you're like, oh, you just love every time they're on the scene because they're such a show stealer and you would love to see them. Maybe sometimes you even think that they've got, a preferential way of ruling the world afterwards, but you still should always be rooting for the main character. Otherwise,
I agree.
What kind of story are you trying to tell that you want people to get invested in it? It's like, yeah, I want all these other cool people to occupy the story far more than whoever I'm following. That just can't be right.
Exactly. And to be honest, it's not as if characters that are absorbed by seeking power cannot be done right. You mentioned Mass Effect as an example previously. I'll bring you one more. I think Virgil from DMC is probably the best character that seeks power that I want to see redeemed. Because he's one powerful shake away from seeing reason.
Nice.
It's not like the idea of, I am completely overwhelmed by my desire of seeking glory, power, whatever it may be, makes this protagonist despicable. No, I don't think so. But the way, in case of Venus Blood, Chaos routes, how often this transpires as I'll betray everybody I convince to become my ally, makes the whole experience moot and pointless. Half the game you convince those divine beings to join you. They finally join you, and first thing you do is sacrifice them. Why? That's the most idiotic thing you do.
Well, I know that we've been talking about, evil main characters and whatnot, but we never said that they would be smart or well-written or interesting main characters either. Such is life, but variety is always good. There are plenty of visual novels out there, and so it's definitely interesting to take another look at how it goes.
Yep, I agree.
So at the end of the day, do you think you prefer these evil kinds of protagonists more than your typical heroic type?
You know what? That's a very difficult question to answer. I'll say this. For sure, I prefer defined protagonists than blank slate. And just so happens that more often than not, evil ones are well defined instead of blank slates, which are the, goody two shoes, please insert your name kind of products. So in a way, yes, I am liking quite a lot of evil protagonists just because they are well defined instead of blank slates. So maybe actually I prefer evil protagonists, maybe.
Nice. As for me, I think I still gotta stick to the classic heroic bits of a knight in shining armor. The evil stuff is always intriguing and interesting, but there's nothing like a good overcoming evil to make the world right. I'm a sucker for that kind of story every time. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you read between the line, then you realize that even if I say I have a fondness of evil protagonists, how they end up is basically, I get all the girls, I have my evil harem, and we achieve good endings because I'm pussy like that. I don't like full destruction, right?
Nice. All right, well, that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you to everyone for listening in, and go ahead and let us know if you have any favorite evil main characters out there.
Oh, yeah, I want to read about all those evil recommendations in the comments. And that note, thanks for listening in. VNture out.
VNture out.